welcome to Scrollin', episode 127. I'm Ket. Joining me, as always, of course, Davius Starjumper. How you doing, man?
Happy to be here.
Okay. Or I was going to ask.
Yeah. You always, if I ever, if I'm like, well, could be somewhere
like
else.
Or if you're ever just like doing well, I'll be like, but are you sad to be here or what? I mean, what is your emotion to be here today?
What about being here? It's got a double meaning this week, though, if I can say, is that I was
You're happy to be alive?
Well, triple meaning. Let's go for the triple threat. We can do that.
Okay.
I more so meant I was at a work trip all last week, and there's no way of sugarcoating it. Just worst work trip I've ever been on.
Oh, wow.
Brutal. Yeah, not just this job, just dead last overall. Dead last.
And this is a guy that's been on a lot of work trips.
Yeah, I feel like I've been on a decent amount. Yeah, I feel like I've been on a decent amount. Yeah, so happy to be here. Happy to be here. Sorry.
Okay, so all that to say, happy to be here.
I'm
also happy to be here.
Good.
It's hot. It's summertime is here, dude. Yeah. I'm sweaty and
hot and humid.
I just took a shower, but I'm already just like gross again.
Yeah.
It's unpleasant. We are here to discuss the Elder Scrolls Online, and so what? Update 42 is coming up. It's dropping next week. I think this coming Monday. Is that right? Am I wrong?
Going live? Is this coming Monday? Is that right?
Is that June 3rd?
That's June 3rd. That's it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, on PC, we are getting it this coming Monday. The Gold Road Update 42.
That caught me off guard a little bit.
Yeah, it's here. It's like right around the corner. And we've done a feature roundup a few weeks ago, but I figured let's just do one last kind of rundown of all the new stuff we're going to be getting, so we know exactly what's coming up here. Mm-hmm. So of course it's the Gold Road. That's the name of the chapter. The name of the zone is West Weld, which is directly west of Cyrodiil. There's a new trial, the Lucent Citadel. We're getting the scribing system. We're getting skill styling. A whole bunch of new sets, right? Like trial sets, overland sets, crafted sets, 3 new mythics, a bunch of new sets. Some base game improvements, such as like the mail system. Actually, quite a lot going on in the mail system. I sort of glossed over that on our first kind of rundown of the patch notes and everything. I didn't really pay close attention to what's going on with mail, but there's a lot of cool stuff actually happening with the mail. I think it's going to be it's going to be a big, really nice quality of life thing. Your mail's not going to be clogged up nearly as often. There's like options for like automatically deleting mail after you take an attachment. You can even delete mail that has an attachment. Currently, you can't do that. So if you want, you can do that. And
interesting. I skipped over that part. I got to be honest. I may have skipped over that part.
Yeah, initially I did too. There's going to be healing immunity indicators on the health bars. Like if somebody is using a Ring of the Pale Order and you can't heal them, you'll be able to tell by looking at their health bar, which is nice. Grizzly says, I tried the mail out on PTS. Very cool. Direct upgrade from the add-ons. Oh, I don't even know about the mail add-ons. So you're like on another mail level.
Mailbox add-ons. Nice.
So that's nice. And a bunch of new achievements added for like, I kind of glossed over them for like reaching certain like levels with, I think, like level 25 for each weapon and level 50 for each weapon and a few other things like that. There's just some new achievements that you can achieve. And if you've already done those things, you'll just log in and there will be a bunch of new achievements that you have. And combat and balance changes, very, very minimal. The Templar Blazing Spear now applies immobilization on the initial cast. Werewolves have that new Terrified debuff, which marks targets and causes them to take additional damage from certain abilities. And Rush of Agony is being changed, right? It has a wider pull radius, but it has I think it was like an 800 millisecond delay before that pull happens. So kind of buff, kind of nerfed.
Hopefully more nerf than buff.
A few other little things. I think those are kind of the big ones, though. The Blazing Spear, the Werewolf thing, and the Rush thing. Kind of the main.
That's the thing about the combat and balance, though, is that it seems very minimal, but scribing is a whole world of combat and balance that's gonna shake the whole
entire
game
universe.
Yeah. We don't even know. We don't know what it's gonna be on shaking it up, but it's gonna be fun.
I think scribing it's going to be confusing. I think that's the thing, is it's just going to be very confusing to parse all the visual effects and like
Oh
what
yeah.
is the thing being cast right now. But I think from a balance standpoint, like let's just fast forward 6 months in the future or a year in the future, and we're familiar with all this stuff, and we know what it is now. I think balance is probably going to be reined in pretty good. Like none of this stuff seems like crazy overpowered. It's just like we've said before, because of their what we call spreadsheet balancing or their standardization of skills, this stuff just falls in line with all of that.
Hmm.
So you're really not able to create anything that has any more power than what already exists outside of maybe those Oblivion Soul Gem thingies.
That will
Being
be
kind of
interesting
weird.
to see with the soul gems. If people have the soul gems, it could be potentially pretty good.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it's going to be wild, and they probably will have to do a lot of adjustments, and it probably will be a balancing nightmare at first. But I kind of feel confident that they'll be able to dial it in and get it where it needs to be if it's not already there right out of the gate. Because people already have access to Major Breach and Major Expedition and that kind of stuff.
I think my biggest thing is what potential, I don't want to say loopholes, that's probably too strong, but like what potential combos are out there that we just don't know of yet, that once they're found, it's going to be like, oh, what do we have here?
Oh, there's going to be all kinds of stuff, and not to mention like unintended things. I'm sure there's all sorts of
Yes.
like unintended interactions between things and all that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it'll take a while, but I think we'll get there. I'm pretty sure as I was playing with the scribing system on PTS, I'm pretty sure every single individual script has its own unique visual effect. So you
Wow.
will
Okay.
eventually learn that. I think your brain will pick up on that eventually, and you'll understand like, okay, whatever grimoire it's attached to, that this sort of particle effect means you've been defiled or whatever. I feel like you'll just kind of learn that over time.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely, and there'll be ones that are much more popular than others, So
Yeah.
I think it'll definitely, you'll start to, we'll all start to recognize them, but I'm just excited for the unknown. Like I'm excited to watch an animation and be
Yeah.
like, what the heck is this? Like it's been a long time, I felt like, since
Oh
uh
yeah, I think it's going to revitalize the PvP scene. I'm sure the PvE scene as well, but like just all these new toys to play with,
mhm,
right? Just a
mhm.
whole new like situation for us to just dig into and like, okay, let's see what we can do here. It's like beyond a new class, because it affects all classes and there's so many possibilities.
Yeah. And what's, I feel like it's very similar to the message that we said about Mythics when Mythics came out, or um what are they called? Allies or companions, I think.
The companions, yeah.
Companions when they came out, is I think they very much have set this up in a way that with this update, it's like the first rollout of this, but this is not going to be the end of this. I think down the road, it's just every update going forward or every expansion going forward, I think there's going to be a couple new scribing skills added to the game, a
Oh, it's
couple.
definitely going to grow.
Yeah, I think they've set themselves up that it's just going to grow bigger and bigger.
Yeah, shout out to Grizzly Con. He posted a video earlier. I can't remember the content creator, but they were talking all about the scribing system, and they made a great point in that video. That was, Tales of Tribute has tripled in size since it was initially introduced to the game. It's just been growing this whole time, so you
Hmm.
can probably expect this to be similar.
Yeah. Man, Tales of Tribute still catches me off guard. As someone who played a little bit, right? Like you can go back past however many
Yeah.
episodes. I played a little bit. It's crazy to think about. There's an entire part of the game that I just absolutely forget exists. That's kind of wild to think
Yeah,
about.
completely off my radar. And I never see anyone talk about it, but they do introduce new decks still. So
It's
people
got,
must be playing,
yeah,
or I feel like they wouldn't bother,
it's got to
right?
have numbers. Like they've got to have people that are interacting with it. Otherwise, yeah, they would have kind of bailed on it.
I think the rewards are pretty good. I feel like maybe a lot of people do it just for that. But I never even learned how the thing works. I never just could understand the thing.
I figured it out, and maybe I need to dive in again because it was maybe with more cards and more decks, it's become a little bit more. But I just don't think about it. But speaking of, I'm going to go back here. Speaking of companions, like There's not any companions in this expansion, is there?
No companions. Is that right?
Interesting. I don't
Hold on.
I don't feel like I've
Wait,
read about.
did I just overlook that?
Did you overlook the companions? Oh, don't you dare!
No, I feel like I would have picked that up, but maybe I overlooked it. Let me just double check. I'm pulling up the patch notes.
This could mean an
I don't think there
if
is.
there's not 2 companions, that means they're giving up on that whole. Like they would not.
No, there's only like combat adjustments to the companion system, but there's not new companions.
You think they're giving up on that? Like they're giving up on the,
Didn't really
the companion system?
Think about that. Yeah, you would think like they wouldn't let a chapter pass without introducing at least one new companion.
Yeah, a whole expansion without one of them can't be a good sign for the companion system.
I'm not crying about it.
They never gave us a Nord. That's my complaint. I told him.
Okay, says Q4. He thinks Q4 they're going to add companions.
Okay.
You think so?
Okay.
With the PvP update?
PvP companion? No, I don't want PvP companion.
Oh, that's going to be the big PvP
gosh.
update. Companion battles.
You can fight your companions against each other? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how
We'll just stand and watch
devastated
them
we will
fight.
be?
That'll be it.
Just devastation. Oh no. Oh no. Battle your companions.
Like we've said before, Tales of Tribute is technically PvP. You know, they could mean anything with it.
That is true. You have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, I mean that's really all that's going on. Nothing really any new stuff on PTS since the last time we talked, you know, so just kind of going down that list of features is all I wanted to do there, just to make sure we're all, you know, ready for it. It's coming, you know.
It's happening. Scribing. We're all going to be diving into scribing. That's where we're going to live. I think the exciting part is that when it comes out, I think everybody's kind of got that initial skill that they're going to go for and they've got in mind. But the part I think I'm excited about is like getting past that first initial skill and then just kind of, you know, playing around with the system and seeing where that leads of like, okay, I've got my initial skill I wanted to do, but like what else is out there now? Like how can this fit in? It's going to be fun.
I have all these ideas right now of what I want to do right away, but I think the real magic is going to happen down the road when I'm stuck on a build that really just isn't quite doing it for me, and like, oh wait, I can do this thing with this, and
I can grab
everything,
buff.
you know, like
absolutely.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be all kinds of moments like that.
Now, let me ask you this. This is a random question that popped in my head. Do you think? Let's go back to this 6 months from now window. 6 months from now, you think majority of PvP builds have a scribing ability on the bar? Or do you think majority of builds, it's the minority of builds that have a scribing ability on the bar?
I think it'll depend on class. Like I think probably Wardens have very little need. Nightblades, I feel like probably have little need.
Every necro will have one for sure.
Every single necromancer,
100%.
If you are a necromancer main, do not skip this expansion.
You have to have it.
But yeah, I would say I bet at least half the builds we see out there will have at least one scribing skill.
Yeah.
But yeah. I was talking about this with a friend of mine. I actually think it was Maddie Quinn. Shout out to Maddie Quinn. Like Wardens, like what would they give up? Like everything they have is so great, you know. Like they're going to keep all that stuff. And Nightblades are kind of in a similar boat.
Yeah, and I think the interesting part to that is the Warden and Nightblade abilities have like, there's not just one part to them. Like there's always building parts. Like you get this skill plus these buffs, or you get this skill but plus this passive. And I think that's where the scribing really comes in. Is it's like here's an ability, and you can add the grimoire, and then you know all the different pieces to it, and so you get multiple uses out of the skill. But just like you said, Wardens and Nightblades, almost all the usable skills on there already do that. So I do agree with you. It's going to be hard to potentially replace one of those with one of these because they kind of already have that.
I mean, I can tell you a ranged stun is going to be super enticing to a lot of people. So I think you can probably expect to see that on a lot of builds, especially ranged builds in general are just kind of the way to go right now, especially in the solo queue. So I think you can probably expect to see that on a lot of builds. But, yeah,
I don't know if I'm excited about that. I'm a little worried about the range stun. Mainly for Sorks. Like I don't love the Sork explosion happening now and getting stunned while it gets thrown on me from across the
Yeah.
map now. I think that's there was a time and a place back in the day where that used to happen and it was very scary, and that time might be coming back. It might be a little terrifying.
The old days of Sorks are coming back. They're already pretty far, quite a bit back, you know. Yeah, Scriving's going to bring it all the way back. Sorks used to be absolutely terrifying. I mean, they are again
Yes.
too. And yeah, having a range stun to add into their toolkit, and they do have the bar space to fit it in there, especially since you can attach Major Breach to it. It's easy to give up Ellie Sus,
Yeah,
no big
yeah.
deal. So
yeah. The Sork combo being thrown on you, and then kind of stunned while it blows up is it's a scary thought. It's a little bit scary.
oh yeah, and back when Flame Clinch had the full long range,
That was
yeah,
it.
it fits so nicely with their combo because you do a Curse, Fury, Stun,
Yep.
and as they're breaking out, it's all popping on
Yep.
them, and you're already hitting them with a spammable, and it all just it's so perfect.
So that's really what we're saying. 6 months from now, Sorks continuing to be terrifying.
They're out of
that's our
control, man.
prediction.
That shield buff is ridiculous. It needs to be reverted.
Yes. It's got
or nerfed big
Yeah.
time. I mean, it's at a point where this is a class that has the ability to streak 10 miles away anytime they want to, but they're choosing to not do that because they can just stand there and look at me and spam their shield and not take a lick of damage, So, and then if they do start to get a little uncomfortable, then sure, they'll streak 10 miles away.
Streak 10 miles away. And then they're going to have shields where good luck even doing anything to them while they streak away. Like they're not worried about it.
Yeah. And they have Dark Deal to get the resources back. They're just unstoppable. Like a well-built Sork that even kind of halfway knows how to play. You don't even have to be very good, honestly. You don't even have to be very good.
Hop on Sork.
Yeah, jump on a Sork. GG. Let's talk about what we've been doing lately in the Elder Scrolls Online. Weekend before last, we had Domination Weekend in Battlegrounds, and it was the worst.
The absolute
Davius,
worst.
what do you think?
Absolute worst. That's what I would add to that. The worst. I'm going to add absolute before the sentence there.
Okay, we're going to add absolute to that. Yeah, it was the absolute worst. I think I might have said Crazy King was my least favorite when that happened, but I changed my mind. Domination Weekend is my least favorite. I really don't like it.
the one thing I will say is it's like we are at least rotating, like just randomly it seems, and maybe there's a connection to it. I have not put the analytics together to look at it, but there's this like we go through the rotation of the different types of weekends, and it's just like every now and then one comes out of left field and it's like, man, this is bad matches. Like these are really bad. And Domination has taken the cake this time around. Like I feel like a couple of cycles ago, it was the Chaos Ball where everybody was just untouchable tanks and matches were ending. They'd grab the ball, match was over, nothing you could do. They were untouchable. And that was like, this is a really bad weekend. That's what this Domination Weekend was, it was terrible.
Yeah, like this was
the bad one.
This was the Domination Weekend that everyone decided to take seriously.
Domination builds and brutal.
And it's the stuff that we've complained about in the past where, if you like to PvP, you're queuing up to get into some fights, and that's why you're queuing up, then you're going to be out of luck. Because you're not going to be able to get into any fights unless you're wanting to fight outnumbered. Because your teammates are just going to want to stand on flags, and if some enemies show up to fight them, they're going to sprint away from that fight as fast as they possibly can and go stand on an empty flag. And so you can follow them to go stand on that empty flag with them, or you can stay and fight outnumbered.
Yeah.
So take your pick. So Sorks were doing pretty well. Nightblades were doing pretty well because they can play solo like that, But aside from them, it was not a good time. It really wasn't. Or like, maybe you would get lucky and you'd get on a team that did want to fight. Maybe you get really lucky and one of the other teams also wanted to fight, but guaranteed that third team is going to be capping those flags and that match is going to end in 3 minutes.
Yeah, that you were able to have one good fight with the two teams and then the match is over.
Yeah. So, and one thing that we always say about these weekend events is like, well, at least you can say participation is high. But in the group queue, at least, I that was not the case this time. We had a 40-minute group
Ooh,
queue on Sunday during this during this event.
yeah,
So
it was tough. Well,
seemed
I
like
think
the
it. I mean,
participation wasn't quite there this time.
well, and the matches were just they were just not good. And I agree with you. Like I feel like Crazy King is I remembered being worse, but something about Domination, like all the flags just immediately being there is it's like that they always had a flag to run to. Like there was always a flag to run off to, and somehow it just Domination. It was the bad one this time around for
Yeah,
sure.
and with the one saving grace of Crazy King is because the flags disappear, you can't rush the game. Like minimum, it's going to
Hmm.
last like 10 minutes.
Yeah,
So that's like the one thing. Well, at least we have enough time to try to get into some fights before the game ends. But yeah, Domination doesn't even have that.
yeah.
The game just ends.
Ugh. It was a toughie.
So glad it's over. I mean, that was weekend before last, so it's over.
Yep,
Thank goodness. We've been keeping up with our pre-mades, like you mentioned earlier, Davius. The one bar squad had its maiden voyage.
it did.
Talked about that on the last episode, and yeah, it was. I think it was Friday before last. We got the all one bar squad together, and we queued up against other sweaty teams, and I felt good about it.
I
I
think
thought it went pretty darn
I
well.
think the one bar squad held its own. Showed a
Yeah,
lot of promise, a lot of capability. I think it's really going to be a thing. I think the one bar squad
yeah,
is really gonna. So two good things here. One, it really held its own. Like I feel like it did really well. Results were well. We got into some legit matches with some legit teams.
oh, totally. And
And
the numbers were comparable to
yeah,
the others,
it
to the other
it
teams.
hung around, and I feel like it got some good data for like tweaks. Like it's got a good direction and some ideas going forward. So and it adds another pre-made squad to the Friday night pre-made night. So
Another team queuing up.
that's
It's
right.
great.
So all good
Yeah,
things. All good things. It was a lot of fun.
it was a lot of fun. Just a quick rundown of that comp, really quick. It's a warden healer in Gossamer and Ozazon. Then it's another warden kind of secondary support wearing Rallying Cry and Zols,
Hmm.
and then two Arcanist beamers, ideally wearing Azure Blight and some other damage set. Shout out to FK, he's in the chat. He was part of the squad that we were running with on the maiden voyage. One of the Arcanists,
Yep.
and King Nar, the other Arcanist. And man, it was fun, dude. It was. I mean, I think it functioned pretty much how I expected it to. We just need practice. We
Yeah.
might make a few little tweaks to the comp, but I think it's really mostly just a matter of practice and kind of figuring out how to get the most out of that comp. But it's
Absolutely.
super fun, a super fun way to make a comp. Like I love how everyone's sort of providing something for the group. Like the Gossamer is giving evasion to everyone, so you don't have to get that for yourself.
Yep.
The second warden is giving major and minor expedition to everyone, so no one has to worry about that for themselves. I love that kind of cross pollination of how the comp's put together, and they have to do that. That's like a unique thing that like a regular comp doesn't so much have to do that, even though they do kind of do that. But
Yeah. Yeah. It
anyway,
was it was awesome. It worked really well, and it was a lot of fun. And I think it's anybody who's interested in joining the one bar pre-made squad, reach out. We're still, more the merrier, but it's a nice, I don't know, it feels like a nice kind of easy introduction to the pre-made nights. Like it's a good, if you're worried about the pre-made nights or you're worried you can't do it, come join the one bar squad. We'll get you set up. It'll be fun, I promise.
yeah, it's a great way to kind of dip your toe into that and experience a bit of success without having to worry about like all this buff management. You can just kind of pay attention to positioning and doing what you got to do, and it's effective, and it's fun.
Absolutely.
Super fun, and it's satisfying too because a major segment of the PvP community kind of turns their nose up at one bar
Very much
builds, and
so.
and we all know like, hey, you can make some good one bar
Yeah.
builds. And it's great to see like a full one bar squad that is really specifically made that way, and to be successful, it's just neat. It's cool.
Yeah. Well, I think you pointed out something to me that I really haven't thought about. I mean, I play one bar on all my builds now, and so I hadn't really thought about it. But the unique part to the pre-made squads is there's so many buffs that pre-made squads you have to have all these buffs. You have to have some
Mhm.
sort of coverage for all these buffs. And some of those buffs are a little tricky to get on the team, so you kind of have to find unique ways to get them. And that's really kind of a bonus of the Oaken Soul of the 1-bar build in this is that with the Oaken Soul, so many buffs are already taken care of. Like you just don't have to worry about it for the team. That it
Yeah, like Phoenix Moth is a popular support set. Gives you minor courage, minor force. Oaken Soul gives you both of those.
Yep,
So you
already
don't need
done,
that set.
already done and
Yeah,
taken care
and
of.
yeah.
So it did kind of play out a cool. There were some cool buffs in there that I didn't really think about initially.
Yeah, and it kind of gives you a lot of freedom actually with the kind of sets you choose. You know, like our damage dealers are just wearing damage sets.
Yeah.
You know, we just want them to deal as much damage as they possibly can. Buff coverage is good. You know, we just need we just need
Yep.
damage. Whereas in a typical squad, maybe they would be built that way, but oftentimes, you know, everybody's in a support set or something like that. So that's neat.
Yeah. It was.
And we have our main squad. That one's not nearly as like defined. It's we kind of try something different every time, and it kind of depends on, who's available, and stuff like that. So I'm not going to kind of specify like this is the comp because it's just different every time. But I will say there are some consistencies that we kind of have always been falling into. We are finding that an Arcanist is equally as crucial to the success of the group as a Warden. Like it's like 50-50 split. You must have a Warden. You also must have an Arcanist. A big reason for that is the fact that they give the entire team minor evasion. That's man in these pre-mades, these sweaties. I mean, it's AOE that kills you every time. It's a whole bunch of like AOE synergies and
Yeah.
ults and spin to wins and all this stuff. That's what kills you. And isn't minor evasion like 15% uh, mitigation against AOE, something like that? It's a lot, even though it's the minor
Yeah.
version of it.
It's crazy how much the minor version of it is for sure.
Yeah. And honestly, we've been using Arcanist in the main support slot, not a Warden. Arcanist has been our primary healer. Shout out to Matty Quinn. He's a healer main, and he's been a Warden main for a while, but he's pretty much fully made the switch over to Arcanist. And our main healer, well, it's really a shielder. He heals, but the main thing that he does is spam shields. It's super duper effective. But since it's mostly spamming shields and not so much healing, we also have to have some healing in the group. So also having that Warden in there, kind of doing 50-50, doing a bunch of damage and also doing a bunch of healing, like an Uncle Sam Icy Claws style build. That combo we have found to be like the magic sauce. You got this Arcanist spamming shields, you got your 50-50 Warden, and we're just kind of unstoppable. And the advantage of that is, one thing that I'm always repeating about Wardens, one major weakness of them in the support space is they got that 12-meter range with
Yeah.
Polar Wind, and you got to stay within that radius to get those nice juicy heals. Kind of limits your team comp options there, and it kind of limits your options for countering other team comps, like a Rush of Agony comp. If you're already kind of bunched up like that, that's your juicy pickings right there. Arcanist has a much wider range of support. You can kind of spread out. You can let your team be free and untethered, and they can kind of be independent agents to an extent, and you're still able to support them and make sure they're safe. And you have that offensive Warden that's kind of in there with them, making sure they're getting those good heals there as well. It just works out really, really well having those in there. And then either a Nightblade or a Sorcerer, one of those two. We typically prefer a Nightblade because they have better debuffs, but one of the two. You need that Mass Hysteria or Streak. That's really the main thing. There really isn't any other like great AoE stuns like that. The Werewolf Fear, that's a good one if you bring a werewolf, that's an option too. There is the Turn Evil, or is it that Fighter's Guild ability where you throw that rune on the ground and it fears people?
Yep.
That is an option. But we found it that's kind of hard to use. It has a kind of a small radius. It often does not hit the people you're trying to hit it with. So it's really a Nightblade with Mass Hysteria and a Sork with Streak, or possibly a werewolf. We haven't actually tried a werewolf, but we've seen other groups do it, and it seems to work well. That seems to be indispensable. Anytime we do not have that in the group, we struggle. We really struggle. And then a Dragon Knight with Talons seems to be also pretty important as well. If we don't have a Dragon Knight with Talons, then we just make sure that we have some sort of AoE route, whether somebody puts a bow on the back bar and slots Bombard, Or maybe if there's an Arcanist, we have them spam that tentacle to root people constantly. You got to have a constant AoE root spam going on against these really tough teams. It's super necessary, super necessary. Otherwise, they're just going to roll right over top of you. If you can't slow them down, it's going to be a slow descent. So it's just typically a Dragonite is best for those Talons because for one, it's a really good dot, it's a really good root, it provides synergies, and Dragonite's already up there, in the middle of everything anyway. So it just makes good sense. So we normally do this thing where, we have our little personal segments here where we talk about like the builds that we've been working on, and it's kind of like a little theory crafting segment. But we've been talking kind of behind the scenes here lately, and there's a lot of stuff that we do in this game that really isn't theory crafting at all, and sometimes even we'll spend the 2 weeks in between episodes really not making any builds at all. We might just be doing some quests or doing some housing stuff, and we're really into that, and we really would like to talk about that. So we've been talking about that, and we decided that this segment is just going to kind of be open to whatever we've been up to, whatever we feel like talking about. So may or may not be about builds. In my case today, it mostly will be, but
and I'm going to cover my theory crafting. So we're really branching out, really getting different. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, probably won't be all that different, but I just feel like I should throw that out there, that we're going to kind of maybe be a little bit more broad with what we talk about here. So Star Jumper, I'm going to let you take it first. What have you been up to here lately?
So as I said, I haven't. I had an entire week-long business trip. So I was out this past week, and then the holiday weekend took a trip with the family. So like I haven't been on the game in a solid week plus, like a little over a week. Yeah. And so I don't have any, I haven't been on the game, so I don't have any specific events or specific builds, but I thought this would be kind of a perfect opportunity to kind of go over my one bar build strategy, kind of how I put together my one bar builds. This is the way I do it. There's a whole different ways to do it, but I just want to talk about how I do it. And potentially why it works for me. I think last week was a perfect example of the business trip followed by a family trip, vacation. That's really one of the things that kind of has attracted me to the one bar, is that like I don't get to play as much as some. Like there's a lot of things that pull me away. And so the one bars are perfect, is like I can hop in, there's no rusty, like there's a skill set there. I can hop on a one bar build, hop right in a game, and not collect a whole bunch of rust on a build. And also they're a little bit easier to farm, I would say. Less less abilities you have to level up, less gear you have to worry about. And so I kind of just thought this is a perfect opportunity to go over kind of what I look at on a one bar build strategy, as well as lately I've been talking about farming a lot of sets and kind of how that works into my one bar build strategy, how that kind of works out and lets me put together a bunch of different builds. So to start things out, on every one bar build I have, on every character, I kind of have my default template. And I feel like you have a similar template to this on your builds, but my default template is I always do a 2-piece monster set, a 5-piece body set, and then an arena weapon. And then I have the Oaken Soul, and then usually jewelry. I'll do 1 druid, 1 trainee. And so really what that's
a good template for a one bar build.
And that's really what I'm looking there is I've got a one bar build, but I'm still getting my 3 set bonuses, if you will. I'm still getting that monster set bonus. I'm getting a 5-piece set bonus, and then I'm getting that arena weapon set bonus. So I'm still getting 3 different bonuses for a one bar build. So that's
nice, because you're basically adding skill slots by doing that. Those procs all do something for you, like an extra heal or something.
Exactly. And then, it's like I said, then it's the Oaken Soul, the 1 druid, the 1 trainee. The one thing I will say is that 5-piece body set, I usually will do the reinforced trainee on the chest piece. And then one of those 5-piece body sets, I will do one of the jewelry pieces. And then if you're going with a damage build, I always do 3 bloodthirsty on the jewelry, 3 bloodthirsty with damage glyphs. If you're going damage build, if you're doing a support or a heal build, I always go 3 infused with the damage glyph. And that's just Bloodthirsty works better for damage, and Infused is just going to buff up your overall heals and support.
If you're a warden, I would say you might want to do recovery glyphs instead of damage, since your main heal is scaling off of health anyway.
On those, I would still do 3 Infused, but absolutely support build. You can definitely, if you need that more sustain, you can absolutely do the recovery glyphs. And then for food, I always do either Jewels of Misrule. Can't talk. Jewels of Misrule.
It's a hard one.
It is a tough one. The Jewels of Misrule or the Sugar Skulls, and that really just depends on the monster set, the body set, the arena, what you've put together so far. If you need more stats, go the Sugar Skulls. If you need more sustain, go with the Jewels food. And then I always do all well fitted or all divines with that reinforced heavy chest. And that's kind of the default template of the build of the pieces I put it on there. The bar setup that I always go for, I kind of have a very similar, setup for that template for that as well, is that I'm always looking for a spammable. Usually I'll go AoE just because with limited bar setup, AoEs, you're spreading out your damage more, you hit more people. So it usually leads to better damage numbers with some pressure. But you can, just a good spammable is what you're looking for there. And then I do a delayed burst, and that really kind of covers my damage is the spammable, the delayed burst. And then usually I'll do an ult that is additional damage, and that really kind of covers your damage combo. The other 2 abilities that I'll do on the bar is a heal over time, almost always vigor, unless there's a specific class ability there. And then your burst heal. And then that final bar spot is usually kind of a utility spot. Most of the builds, I'll usually figure out some sort of speed ability. But if it works better for the build, that's kind of your utility spot to plug in something that fits for the build. But so you got
kind of your one flex that you have, right? Like
it's your one flex spot that whatever works best for the build, that's where you plug in that ability. Yeah, and so like I said, with that template, you're getting your 3 set bonuses, which is really nice. And then really what I like about it, and this is kind of what I was saying with the sets I'm farming, it's a very plug and play mentality. On a lot of my builds, I'll have the 2-piece monster set, a 5-piece body set, an arena weapon. And I can really just plug and play the 5-piece set. That's really kind of the changeable part of the build is that, if you have a build where you want to do different things, you just kind of plug this 5-piece set for this 5-piece, and you can really easily change a build without having to replace a lot of pieces. And so I really like kind of the plug and play ability of, if you got an idea for a build and then you kind of like where it's going, you can really test some stuff with the 5-piece sets. And so that's one of the things I've been farming lately is just farming some really effective 5-piece sets. And, when I've got a couple 1-bar builds to go from, I can just kind of plug and play those to what best suits the situation. Or if I'm going on a team or doing some duos or something like that, and kind of plug in what would be better for the team and still overall keep the build that I'm familiar with and playing with. But it can make a huge difference for the build because that's really kind of the focus of the build is that 5-piece set. The other part is the monster sets. I'm pretty particular in this. This is just a preference thing, but there's only a few monster sets that I usually ever go with. And it's just
only a few good ones.
Yeah. And it really just depends on what I'm going for. If I'm going for an all out damage build, I'm going Baylorg 100%. I'm throwing Baylorg on there. That's the way to go. It's going to get me more damage, more penetration. If I need a little bit more defense, or everybody knows I love me some ult gen. Bloodspawn's the way to go. That's going to lead to more ult and a little bit more defense on the build. And then shout out Uncle Sam on this third one. If you just want to go overall utility, that's just going to be good on all accounts. I got to throw Zols on there. Zols has been I've been newly introduced to it. I just farmed myself a set, but I am loving it. And it's
a great set.
Truthfully, it fits on any build. Like whatever build you want to throw it on, it's going to be effective. It's going to be good. So
Sam's been using it on a DK.
Yeah.
Here lately.
Yeah, it is very good. So I definitely throw Zols in that rotation. It works really well.
If anyone needs a reminder, Zols is the one when you break free, it stuns everyone around you.
Yep.
Like every time with no cooldown.
Yeah, and it gives you weapon damage for how many people it stuns. Like, it is very good. It's a great monster.
In our 1-bar comp, it's indispensable. It's our one AoE stun, and it saves our butt every time. They'll come and ult dump the group, and then Davius will break free with the Zols, and it gets everyone off our back.
Everybody, and we get that nice reset. The other part that I would say is the arena weapon is, it's good for that third piece set bonus, and this just may be a thing that's in my head, but it's extremely important to me because you've only got one bar. So you're already very limited on your bar space and your abilities. But that arena weapon enhancing one of those abilities on your bar just makes that more, your bar space is very precious. And if you can buff one of the abilities that you're already using more than you would on a 2-bar build because you've just got these abilities to go with, I just think it makes it that much more important that you're really enhancing one of those abilities and you're focusing on giving it a buff. So the arena weapon's a very important part to me, of making sure that you're really utilizing your bar space and really kind of buffing one of those abilities that you're already using a lot. And then the last part that I would say is really good about the O-Console is that I love, 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 love making theme builds. That's just what I'm all about. I love having a theme to my build. And that is 100% perfect for 1-bar builds. Like, you need to pick a direction and just go all in on that direction. You've got, limited set pieces that you can go. You've got limited bar space. You really kind of have to go all in on your direction to really get the most out of the builds. And
you don't want to be a generalist as a 1-bar build. You really want to be a specialist.
Yes, exactly. And I love making those kinds of builds. And that it just works perfectly for 1-bar builds. I'll give kind of an example. My Bear Claws, my Warden, my Stam Warden. That is a all in on one focus build. That's the point blank snipe build. You guys have probably heard me talk about it. But it is that point blank snipe build. But really, the overall goal of that build is, it's a damage based build, but it's all poison damage. So I'm doing Swamp Raider for the 5-piece. I do Lethal Arrow for the spammable, Sub Assault for that delayed burst, Toxic Barrage for that ultimate. All of those are getting that Swamp Raider buff. And then, that's all getting that ramped up damage. And then that arena weapon is just amplifying the percentage of that damage. And so that whole build just really feeds off each other. It's just really focusing every damage ability I have is taking advantage of that Swamp Raider 5-piece set and getting that massive damage buff. And so that's kind of a good example of just you pick a theme and you just go all in on that. And then the other example I was going to kind of talk about is, I got to talk about Lord of Nords. If we're going to talk builds, I got to find a way to talk about him in there. But he's kind of a perfect example right now of the plug and play, just in the sense that we've been talking a lot about scribing. I mentioned on the last episode, I'm really excited about this shield throw with the bash add-on that you can do to it. Right now, he's got the Basalt Blooded Warrior set. I'm going to swap that Basalt Blooded Warrior set out for a set of Drake's Rush. And that shield throw that bashes at range is going to kick off that Drake's Rush. And so with a very kind of minor plug and play, I'm basically going from just giving myself major heroism to now I'm going to give major heroism to my entire team.
Yeah, I like that. I've been doing a lot of similar. I've been doing something very similar with Betsy here lately, where she doesn't really just have one build. It's kind of always changing depending on who she's playing with and who I'm fighting against and that kind of stuff. I kind of have a few different sets and a few different bar setups that I rotate around. When you play a lot of Battlegrounds like we do, you load into a match, you can just kind of quickly glance at the scoreboard. You recognize a lot of the names, or even just look at what classes are in there. And you can get a pretty good sense of like, okay, this bar setup's going to be better for this match. I should probably put this set on for these teammates that I have here. I have some pretty low health teammates, so maybe I'm going to put on the Order's Wrath so my heals will be a little stronger to help them out better.
Absolutely.
All that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's just always constantly changing around. Was that the end of your?
That's
all
it.
You had to say?
Speaking of old Betsy, tell us about old Betsy. This is the best transition we've ever had, by the way. Like, killer. It was perfect.
Perfect. Yeah, so I got a few builds that I'm going to talk about here today. First one is Old Betsy. I've made a few tweaks. Like I said, her build is kind of always, it's not really a set in stone thing anymore, but the last few days there is a certain setup that I've really been liking in the solo queue specifically. So I've basically been gearing her to be a bit more supportive. She's more kind of, she's always been pretty team oriented and very much a team player, but she has actually drifted a bit over time to being more of an offensive, aggressive sort of type of play style that still has some support capabilities, of course. But there was a point in time when I actually really played her like a support that also did some damage, so I'm kind of leaning back in that direction. She still has very good damage. I'm not sacrificing the damage at all. I'm just kind of building it a little bit different so that I have damage and good support at the same time. So the setup right now, I basically have just replaced Deadly Strikes with Order's Wrath. So it's Order's Wrath as a double bar set, Wretched Vitality on the back bar with a bow, Black Rose Prison dual wield on the front bar, Gaze of Sithis Mythic Helm, and One Piece Magma. And then a few skill bar changes. If anyone's been keeping up with Betsy's build, I'll kind of run down these changes here. So number 1, using Reflective Light for my crit buff instead of Camo Hunter. And the reason is that gives me a crit buff on both bars. So when I flip to my back bar, I get that crit buff for my heals, some juicier heals with that Order's Wrath, giving me extra healing, crit healing and all that stuff.
Very nice. Yeah.
It's definitely worth doing. Plus Reflective Light is a dot, so it's just more damage too. I got rid of Solar Barrage and replaced that with Caltrops. And that's a major throwback to Betsy's original setup. She had Caltrops slotted for the longest time. And that gives her source of Major Breach, which she didn't have previously. And it also kind of allows her to, build that house and claim a piece of ground. She puts her Cleansing Circle on the ground. She puts the Caltrops there on the ground. And suddenly, my team has a major advantage in this area. And both of those things cover a huge area as well.
Yeah, those are both huge area effect abilities.
Yeah, it's giving that, it's slowing enemies down. It makes it really nice to kind of for zoning purposes and stuff like that. It's actually really good damage too, just as a dot. It's not bad damage at all. I'm really enjoying having Caltrops on the bar again, but that replaced Solar Barrage. So that means she really isn't doing that kind of stacking AoE pulse gimmick thing anymore. She still has Deadly Cloak and Crescent Sweep, but that really isn't kind of her thing anymore, at least not with this setup. Another change is I got rid of Toppling Charge, went back to the Javelin, another throwback to her old setup. And so it's a lot more like with the version of her build that I've been using up to this point. It's very aggressive. It's very chase people down. If there's a Sork streaking away, she's going to gap close them and gap close them and gap close them again and stay on top of them and make sure they die, and all that kind of stuff. But with this setup, there is no gap closer, and it's much more of a stand your ground, stay with your team, kind of mentality. It's a very different shift in how I'm approaching the fights. It's much more, how I used to play this character, and it feels good to kind of get back into that, and super duper effective. Another big change, no beam. Got rid of the beam.
Wow. Big time.
I replaced it with Radiant Aura, which is that ability that gives you and your team all 3 minor recoveries for a minute at a time.
That's crazy length of time.
Yeah, and it's a free cast, really good ability. But the beam, the more I use it, the more I feel like I don't really need it. For one, against good players, it often just doesn't kill them. People have figured out if you just hold block and cast a heal, you don't die.
Yeah.
It's kind of that easy. And if you're in melee range, this is a StamPlar, so I'm fighting in melee range. Then the second someone gets into execute range, they just start bashing while healing, and that bash will interrupt your beam. And by the time you break out of that interrupt, they've already healed all the way back up. You would have been better off just continuing to spam jabs. And I've actually ran into that a lot of times, and actually for a while there, even when I still did have the beam still slotted, I would be in situations like that where I'm in melee, this person is in execute range, but I'm choosing to just keep spamming jabs because I don't want to get that beam interrupted, and I just want to make sure they die. So I've ran into that so much. I've ran into so many cases where someone has 10% health and they're still just not dying because they're block casting heals and everything. So it's just I don't need this beam. I'm gonna put Radiant Aura on there. It's gonna help me support my team better. It gives me better sustain as well, so I can be a better support when I need to be. And
I like
just more fun way to play. I never liked the beam anyway.
Less Templars with beam. I'm all for it. I like it. I hope this catches.
Yeah, and I'm out there getting the kills anyway. Betsy's out there. She's racking them up without the beam. Don't need it.
I like that you got Caltrops back on there. That Caltrops is the most Betsy ability in my mind ever. That's perfect. I love that you've got that back on the build.
Caltrops with the Javelin. That's the classic kind of setup.
That's Betsy, right?
Yeah, that's old school, old school Betsy. Kind of we've made a really long circle back around to this. It's really I mean, her bar setup is it really has not changed all that much over the years. Like, she has Honor the Dead slotted now because hybridization
Sure.
allowed
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Um, and she no longer uses, Rally, the ability Rally, because, Jabs gives you your damage buff now, and so she switched to dual wield so she could use the Black Rose dual wield.
Mhm, mhm.
But otherwise, it's the same bar setup as always.
That's awesome.
It's hard to improve upon perfection, you know?
There you go. There you go.
So I talked about this a little bit on the Booncast last week, about, the armor set Wretched Vitality. It's my favorite armor set, but I've been on a kind of a silent quest. Haven't really been talking about it, but I've been kind of searching for ways to get away from Wretched in my builds.
I never thought I'd hear you say those words.
Well, as much as I love Wretched, I've never liked using the same set on more than one build. You know, I
Yeah.
just don't like doing that in general. So, and there are cases where I'm like thinking like, surely Wretched isn't simply the best choice all the time, right? Like that can't be the truth, how it is. Um, and you heard me talk about last week how I was setting up a Templar to be like a pure damage Templar, and it ended up having less damage than Betsy has. And it's because she uses Wretched, which allows her to invest in a lot of damage. So, you know, that's an example that's like, well, I can't really get it. Wretched really is just the best choice here. You know, it's if I want to do as much damage as I can possibly do while still having enough sustain to be functional, Wretched's the best choice. And it makes a lot of sense for Templar in particular because they have biting jabs that cost stamina, and that's the version most Templars are going to want to use. And then they have that support kit that all costs magicka, you know, and so it makes a lot of sense for them to kind of split that resource consumption like that and use something like Wretched to help them with that. But not every class is put together that way, you know, and as I've kind of gone through my builds here, I have found that Wretched is not always the very best choice. It synergizes particularly well with Templars, particularly well with sorcerers. It's good for necromancers too because their sustain kind of just generally sucks. Um, but there are cases where Wretched actually is not the best choice. So I'm going to talk about a few of those builds here. These are my non-Wretched builds. Okay. First one is Catface Johnson. He's my MagBlade, and the main thing is he's using Soul Cleaver, that class set that comes from Infinite Archive. Infinite Archive. So it's Soul Cleaver as a double bar set, War Maiden on the front bar, Master Bow back bar, Sithis Helm, and One Piece Magma. And the thing about Soul Cleaver is it essentially takes the place of Wretched, right? It's reducing the cost of the abilities that I spam the most by 18%. It's also increasing their potency by 18%. And so the thing about Wretched is, you know, Wretched gives you a lot of sustain, which then allows you to invest in damage. But Soul Cleaver is giving me sustain and damage, you know, so I can still invest in damage on top of the damage that I'm getting from Soul Cleaver. Also, siphoning attacks was majorly buffed recently, and it's a siphoning ability, which means Soul Cleaver applies to it. And
Such a
that's a
good
major
set.
source of our sustain right there. Yeah.
Such a good set.
Such a good set. And you know, siphoning attacks is even without this set is an incredible source of sustain. So then you pair it with this set, and you're just kind of unstoppable in that regard. So this is a situation where Wretched would really just make this build worse. You know, it would just not be as good of a build if I were to use Wretched instead of Soul Cleaver. Now, of course, this is for a ranged kind of Blood Mage style Nightblade. Not every Nightblade wants to play this way or wants to build this way, but I love this style of Nightblade. It's exactly the style that I like to play, and you know, yeah, Wretched would not be good. So okay, that's one non-Wretched build. Next non-Wretched build I have is Randolph, my Arcanist. And the main thing, really, Arcanist, it doesn't really matter. I'll talk about the build here, but it really doesn't even matter what the build is because Arcanists just have such great sustain. You know, like just built into the class. Doesn't you? I'm wearing 2 damage sets here. You know, I don't, and I'm not really invested super heavily to get my sustain back. I'm using the Serpent Moon to Stone. You know, but otherwise it's 3 bloodthirsty jewelry with damage glyphs. You know, and it's easy peasy.
Mm.
So the build, I went out and farmed a set of Tarnished. So it's Azure Blight and Tarnished Nightmare.
Ooh.
Have a Defending Potentate's Bow on the back bar, Gaze of Sithis Mythic Helm, One Piece Magma. And yeah, Wretched is just not needed. The class, the built-in sustain for the class is just already so good, you just don't need it. It's that simple.
And this is your first time. This is your first build using Tarnished, right?
Yep.
What's it like to be on the other side of the broken glass? I need to know.
I like it. It's fun. I like it a lot. It hits really hard. People panic whenever it hits them, and I really like pairing it up with Azure Blight because Azure Blight, you got to build up all those stacks, and so you're not always getting a good kind of pop with that, but when you do, it's great. It's worth using for those moments when it is good. But I like that I'm using Tarnish for that consistent damage. So even when Azure Blight isn't popping, Tarnished is, and I'm still doing some good stuff there. And when they both pop, look out.
Oh boy.
It's actually my my Premade setup. I use this in our Premade comp whenever they need me on an Arcanist, and it's awesome for that. But I can just take this into solo queue too, and it's really good there too. Like I've tried Azure Blight on a lot of builds in the solo queue, and it's really not great, but because of the Arcanist beam and how it can proc it so fast, you actually can use Azure Blight in the solo queue, and it works pretty well. And what's amazing about Arcanist is you can really just take the exact same build into like PvE and really not even change anything and go into a battleground and use the same build and it functions, It's an oddly like universal class. You don't even really need to change much about the build from one thing to the next.
If you ever hit Infinite Archive again, this is who you need to start taking in there.
Oh, this is what I did a veteran Vatishran run with a 1-bar Arcanist last week. Cakewalk, absolute cakewalk.
Nice.
By the way, you can make a 1-bar like PvP Arcanist super duper easy. Like you can make this exact build I just talked about, Azure Blight and Tarnished Nightmare. Put Oaken Soul in there, make it a bow build, so you get your major expedition. All you need is your tentacle, your beam, vigor, your damage shield, and the fulminating rune.
You're set.
That's your build. You got everything. Everything's there.
Oof.
So that's another non-Wretched build. Again, yeah, Wretched would just make this build worse because I would just have less damage and more sustain than I need. And then the last build I have to talk about is Flossie, my StamDK, a Nord, my one and only Nord.
Save the best for last right there. Old
best
Flossie.
for last, that's right. Hey, in a way, that's true. This is a killer build right here. This is like one of the most perfect builds I have on my entire roster. It's just so put together so nicely. And I had a lot of help with some other people kind of giving me advice on decisions to make and stuff. So the build is Dragon's Appetite on the body, 2 pieces Bloodspawn, Master's Dual Wield on the front bar, Maelstrom 2-hander on the back bar, 1 trainee, 1 druid, and the Malakath Band of Brutality. Ooh. That's right, Malakath. It's still out there doing stuff.
I like it.
So this is just like your classic StamDK brawler. I mean, just all the way when you think of a StamDK and like what that looks like and what that plays like, that's what this is. That's exactly what this is. So I'll just kind of go through a few points here. For one, a really good ulti gen. It's a Nord using Bloodspawn. I got 1 decisive weapon on the dual wield bar. So that right there gives me quite a bit of ulti gen, which is obviously great for a Dragon Knight. Also, one thing I do in the build is for all the abilities, all the morph choices, anything that gives me the option to have healing and damage, I take that option. So, for example, with my Master Dual Wield, I use the Blood Craze morph to get that heal. I use Burning Embers instead of the Poison Claw. I use Shattering Rocks instead of Fossilize because that gives me a heal when people break out of that, which is actually really nice. You think about that, like, a lot of times you fossilize someone when they're attacking you. You're trying to take the pressure off of you. So you're stunning them so they're no longer attacking you, gives you a moment to breathe. And then when they break out, they're healing you. So it's like a double good thing.
That's nice.
So yeah, you got the Blood Craze, the Burning Embers, the Shattering Rocks, and that's on top of the heal you get from Dragon's Appetite when it procs. You got all that ulti gen. That's essentially a full heal every time you get your ult. You got your tripods, plus your just actual healing abilities, Vigor and Coagulating. So it's just, there's so many sources of healing, and the way the build just kind of functions, you're getting one of those heals at some point when you need it every time. It just, it's like you're the most lucky person in the world, like just every time you think you're going to die, nope, you don't.
You got a heal coming in.
You're somehow still alive. Yeah, you got it coming in. And you know how we've said before about Dragon Knights, like the best way to play a Dragon Knight, if you think you're in trouble, you just need to stay aggressive, keep fighting.
Just keep the fight going.
That's never been more true than with this build right here. It's made to play exactly like that. You know, like if you think you're in trouble, you think you're losing too much health, fight your instinct to run away and hide behind a wall and heal up. That's for night blades. That's
That's
not
the
what Dragon's
Nightblade
Knights
way.
do. Okay.
This is a Nord DK, for goodness sakes. You just keep on
yeah.
fighting.
You just need to keep on fighting and have faith that that health bar is going to figure out a way to fill itself back up, and it will. It will do it. I'm telling you. Super fun build. I mean, and yeah, you can just kind of get in the brawl, especially if you just have like one teammate. Like if there's just like a Templar throwing cleansing circles on the ground, that's all you need, and you're just absolutely unstoppable in that case. So the damage, 4 dots. I have Blood Craze, Burning Embers, Nauseous Breath, and Quick Cloak. That counts as a dot. Dragon's Appetite attaches its damage. It's kind of like a Draugr type set. It attaches to every instance of damage, every one of those dots, and every status effect, every light attack, every single thing. The Maelstrom two-hander that I have on the back bar, it attaches like 516, I think, damage to all instances of direct damage. So, you know, our Master's Dual Wield Blood Craze, that hits twice per cast, plus the light attack weave going into it. That's 3 direct damage things right there that'll attach itself to. But, you know, I've talked to a lot of people about this because I think a lot of people are under the impression that you should only use Master Two-Hander.
Correction, Maelstrom two-hander.
If you're using something like Force Pulse or Rapid Strikes or something that hits a lot of times like that, you know? Mm-hmm. And certainly that's the way to maximize the Maelstrom two-hander, but it's a great backbar weapon even when you're not really building for it, you know, because 500 damage attached to every instance of direct damage, that's going to be at least 1,000 damage every single attack, right? Because your light attack weaving, and even when you cast a dot, it has an initial attack that deals direct damage. All of them do pretty much. So you're adding 1,000 DPS, you know, to your combo, even if you're not building for it. So it's still a great backbar weapon no matter what. 3 Bloodthirsty, Malakath Band of Brutality, ramping all that stuff up. And it's just a dot build. All I do is rotate those dots, make sure those dots stay on them, and then I just spam Blood Craze as long as those dots are on them. And I just keep doing that till they die.
That's awesome.
And as soon as they start losing just a little bit of health, that Bloodthirsty starts creeping in, that Malakath is ramping it all up, and it's just it's that classic Dragon Knight where, like, you know, this fight might last 30 seconds, but within the first 5 seconds, you know you've lost. You know, like you can already tell where it's going.
It'll go on, but you know where the end is going to be.
Yeah, because the DK never has to let up because of what I was talking about with all the automatic kind of built-in heals happening. He never has to let up the pressure, you know, like, so you might be attacking for a little while, but at some point you're going to have to go rebuff and reheal and go into a kind of a defensive phase. But the DK doesn't have to do that. He's just going to keep attacking while you're doing all that stuff, you know, and then the second you stop doing all that stuff, you're toast.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's a super fun build. I know we've been talking a lot about how Dragon Knights are really tough in the solo queue, and that's true. I mean, that's even true for this build. There's no escaping that, but I think this is about the best you can do on a Dragon Knight for a solo build. So if you're like bound and determined to play DK in the solo queue right now, this is maybe one of the better options for you, just because of all the automatic healing that's all attached to damage, and it's very, very good damage. And yeah, that's all the builds I have to talk about.
Very nice.
And I think that's pretty much everything I had to talk about. The only other thing I was going to mention was the fact that I did that Vatishran run with the Arc Beamer, and the fact that it was not even challenging.
Were you going for a specific weapon, or?
I just wanted to see how hard it was with the Arcanist, because I did it with the heavy attack Sork back when that was popular. So I wanted a kind of a comparison. It was even easier than the heavy attack Sork, I thought.
That's wild. Did you get a good weapon from it?
Actually, yeah, I think I got a sharpened two-handed maul.
Ooh, great one.
Yeah, not bad at all.
Yeah, very good. That's fantastic.
Yeah. All right. So that's what all we've been up to, man. We both had a lot to say there, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. It really was a good one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. Grizzly says, so funny to do the hard content from the past few years and see how much Arcanist trivializes it. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Just trivializes the word too, man. Like it's nothing. Like I did die a few times. It was only because like I had forgotten certain mechanics. Like just one-shot mechanics was the only thing that even came close to killing me. Nothing else was even.
That's wild. That's crazy. Right now.
emails here. scrollingpodcast@gmail.com is our email address. We'd love to hear from you. Ask us any questions, make suggestions for the show, tell us a joke, shout out to a friend, food-related questions, obviously, always welcome.
Of course.
First email comes from a scary dinosaur. Ah!
A scary dinosaur.
A scary dinosaur says, "Hello, my friend and I found your podcast and watch it every other Wednesday when it drops." I'm guessing they watch it on YouTube. I don't know.
Nice.
Just wanted to say thanks for hosting great discussions and giving us something to look forward to. He asked to join the guild on PCNA. He says we must catch Xbox. That's right. We're catching up, Xbox.
There we go.
So we got Scary Dinosaur in there. So thanks for writing, dude. I'm glad you like the show. Next email is not really an email. It comes from, it was a question asked on Discord. It comes from John E. Danger, one of our Stoons Boone people, pretty sure. Yep, that's right. Had to double check. He says, I wanted to ask about MagWard and heard you guys mention Ice Furnace on the pod. I've tried Frostbite recently and it didn't knock me out. How does Ice Furnace compare? Before I go crafting a bunch of gear, figured I'd ask some seasoned vets. So we actually talked about this on the Discord already. John's already got his answer, but I just thought it was a perfect podcast question, you know?
Yeah.
Ninja Pulls is the person that made that scribing video we mentioned earlier.
Nice.
Here's the con. All right. So yeah, I had the same experience with Frostbite, dude. I don't think it's a very good set, and the problem is, Warden isn't really a Frost Mage. You know, that's like something they shoehorned into the class later, but they're not really. It seems like Frostbite is a set made for Warden, but Warden really isn't able to capitalize on it. You know, because their damage skill line, none of those abilities deal frost damage.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the animal companions ability, it's all magic damage and poison damage and bleed damage and no frost damage. You know, they have some frost damaging abilities elsewhere in their kit, but it's not their primary source of damage by any means at all.
I feel like there's misleading with both the Necro and the Warden of like you think there's frost damage in there, but it's really not enough for it to be like a full. You can't go full frost.
Yeah, you can't. You just can't. And with Frostbite, I feel like to get the most out of Frostbite, it really does need to be a build where you're dealing pretty much all frost damage. And you just can't make a Warden like that. Not a viable Warden that deals nothing but frost damage. You know, that's just not going to be a good build, I don't think. Ice Furnace is an excellent set to use with a Warden. Just because, you know, Wardens do well with Frost Staff, right? Equipping a Frost Staff gives you 12% more damage done. And you can use the Maelstrom Frost Staff to put Wall of Frost on the ground, which will keep Frostbite proccing on cooldown. Frostbite deals flame damage in an 8-meter radius every 1 second whenever you deal frost damage. So you put Wall of Frost on the ground, that's touching somebody all the time, you know, so that's just boom, frost damage, boom, fire damage to everyone in the area. And what makes it so good is that fire damage, that AoE fire damage is direct damage, which means it has a higher chance of applying the burning status. If you have a charged staff, it has a really high chance of applying that status. And since it's such a huge area, and since you have that Wall of Frost down, it's always hitting everyone all the time. Within a few seconds of a fight, you have the burning status permanently active on everybody, and that's where the damage is coming from. If you're on PC and you look at your combat metrics, you'll look at the Ice Furnace set itself, how much damage it's dealing, and you'll probably be pretty disappointed because it actually doesn't deal a lot of damage. But what you need to do is go look at the burning status and see how much of your damage that accounts for, and it's a ton. It's a ton of damage. So that's what Ice Furnace is doing for you. It's just getting that burning on everybody. And since Wardens do so well with a Maelstrom Frost Staff, because they do so well with frost damage, you know, it just pairs so perfectly with that. Anything to add to that, Davius?
No, I mean I completely agree with what you're saying. That if you want to go, if you're between those two sets, Frost Furnace definitely the way to go.
Yeah, that's good. And just shout out, me and GrizzlyCon have similar Warden builds with Winterborn and the Master Frost Staff. another good pairing too. Very different kind of build, but a very fun pairing there as well. So thanks for writing, John E. Danger. Next email comes from MMXXIV, which is Roman numeral 24. I looked it up.
Wait. 20, just 24 or an M number? M.
Oh, I think it was 2024. 2024 is what it was.
2024. Okay, that makes more
I think
sense.
I made a typo there. 2020. Roman numeral 2024.
Nice.
Yeah.
Don't want to get the name wrong.
But this, yeah. But this was an email sent in-game. It was an in-game mail.
Nice. Very cool.
So he says, hey, just heard your episode 11 from 2020 with Grimm's Forge, Icy Fire, and Starjumper. Grimm is a super nice guy. Appreciate your podcast, dude.
Ah, man. Shout out. Episode 11. Woo.
I know. Pretty sure that was your first appearance, the first time you joined up. And you've been along for the ride ever since.
First episode for old Starjumper. That is true. I think you're right. Yeah.
It all started. Really, that's when we kind of found the formula and kind of knew what we were at least trying to do from there.
we didn't know what we were doing, but we knew what we were trying to do. That's the key.
But those were the good old days with Grimm's Forge and Icy Fire down in the Imperial City sewers.
Man, we were hitting the
that was
sewers.
our nightly thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It was, I'm pretty sure that's when they took away the group queue in Battlegrounds. Yes. And so we decided, let's just hang out in Imperial City from now on, so we can play together. And we just bumped into those guys down there and just kind of became friends. And it was just us four pretty much every night. We come home from work and
hit the
do
sewers.
our home stuff or whatever. And then we'd get on and just run around the sewers. It was great.
Man,
great.
I totally forgot that they took away the group queue. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah.
That was a rough time in itself. You could still have deathmatch, but just not with friends.
Yeah, you can never have all the things.
Yeah, you can't, they don't want to give too much, all right? Keep you wanting more.
Yeah. So thanks for writing MMXXIV, Roman numeral 2024. Last email comes from Chumpy.
All right, Chumpy.
I think it just came in yesterday. You've been kind of cutting it close here lately. He says, hey there, scrollies. I'm in a pickle and I need your help. What would you say is the sweet sauce king? He means like that ketchup of sweet sauces. I do so admire you guys and all the fans. I hope we don't get taken over by robots.
Sure. We all hope that doesn't happen.
Love and prosperity, Chumpy. Have you seen some evidence that might be happening, Chumpy?
What are you seeing, Chumpy? What's going on here? More importantly than the sauce king. Yeah, what have you seen?
King of sweet sauces.
Well, I need an example. What's an example of a sweet sauce? Like a
Grizzly says Chick-fil-A sauce, baby.
Is that because that's like a honey mustard? Like, is honey mustard considered a sweet sauce?
I think we could take honey mustard. Yeah, I think.
What about just honey?
I think. No, that's not a sauce.
Okay.
That's not a sauce.
Okay. So like sweet and sour sauce, honey mustard, anything that's got a sweet side to it. There's some sweet barbecue sauces out there, I would say.
I was about to say, like, it's hard for me to not just say barbecue sauce right now, right? Carolina Gold barbecue sauce, Grizzly Con.
I'm gonna go.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm a big sweet sauce guy outside of barbecue sauce.
I'm gonna go with honey mustard. I'm definitely a honey mustard guy for sure.
I do like honey mustard. I do like a Dijon.
That's the way to go.
Or, yeah, you're right. That's you want to fancy up a sandwich real quick. You get some of that mustard with the brown speckles in there.
You know what? I'll even go. We said this is really squirreling a bit, but I'll even say, we're talking sandwiches now. We're talking sandwich toppings. I'm a sweet pickle guy. Like, give me the sweet pickle rather than the sour pickle. Sweet pickle, 100%.
I don't think I have a preference one way or the other, but I like to go real minimal on the pickle, like one single pickle.
Just one. Okay. All right.
Yeah, just like a little surprise in the middle.
That's like the McDonald's. What's their little tiny burger called? They just throw one pickle on there.
Yeah. No, it's not a sauce.
I
But,
wasn't saying it
we
was
talked
sauce,
about
bro. It
the
was just
sauce.
sweet. We were talking about sweet, so I
The
went to sweet pickles.
the sauce talk has concluded. Now we're talking about pickles.
Now we're talking about pickles.
What's the problem?
Yeah.
I don't see the big deal.
Food was mentioned.
It's weird. Like with a burger, especially. I'm like, with pickles. I don't like a bunch of pickles, but I do like one single pickle in the middle, just to have a little
A little bit of a
hint,
surprise,
kind
if
of
you
in the
will. A
middle.
little
Yeah.
surprise when you get to the middle of the burger.
Yeah. But it's not overpowering. Just a little something.
Wow, it's X marks the spot right there on that burger. The treasure map of a burger.
All right. Hope those were acceptable answers. Thanks for writing, Chumpy. Scrollingpodcast@gmail.com. Please send us emails. We have a guild. The guild's name is Stoons Goons. It is literally the best PvP guild in the game. And it just so happens to be the best named guild on the PC NA, Xbox NA, and PlayStation NA servers. We're on all three,
Look at
baby.
All over the place.
If you'd like to join, scrollingpodcast@gmail.com is the place to send an email, and we'll send you an invite. If your guild list is full, or if you're on a different platform in the EU or whatever, that's okay. The Discord is the true home of the guild. In-game membership is not required. Scrollingpodcast@gmail.com if you'd like to get invited to the Discord or the guild or both.
The next step is that we have translated. We get the podcast episodes translated to different languages. That's really
different languages. We need to get.
That's really next
We need
step.
to get EU server Stoons Goons going. We're
There you
we're
go.
gonna spread into other games. We'll get WoW guilds going. People, watch us.
don't dare us. We'll do it. I feel like if we go translated, I want to pick my translated voice. I feel like that's the benefit. You get to pick the voice that translates you.
Okay.
Right?
Sure. Yeah, if we
that's
get to
how it
that
works.
point,
Yeah.
I'll let you pick. Dude.
Okay,
I promise.
Perfect. Don't you pick my translated voice without telling me now. Don't you do it.
All right. If you would like to support the show, an easy thing you can do is go to the Apple Podcast app and give us a star rating, and especially a written review. Just makes it easier for people to find our show. If you'd like to go further than that, you can go to patreon.com/scrollandpodcast. Sign up to receive Stoons Boon for $3 a month. That gives you access to a few different things, including the Booncast, which is a shorter solo podcast that I do on the off weeks. It's still about ESO. Other ways you can help: if you're a member of the guild end game, you can drop stuff into the guild bank, crafting mats, gold, potions, style pages, anything that you think might be helpful. We'll take it. If you do that, be sure and let us know, because I don't check the guild bank all that often. It might just be sitting there collecting dust if you don't tell me. But that helps a lot. We do a lot of theory crafting. I mean, I will make through the course of testing a build, I will spend 300 transmutes just to throw the build in the trash because it's not as good as I thought it would be. And I'll go through a stack of potions in a day easy. And it's all for the purpose of this podcast. It's all stuff that I end up talking about here.
Yeah.
So you drop a stack of tripods in the guild bank, it's going to get used, I promise.
Definitely.
And the best thing that anybody can do is just come join the community. This show wouldn't exist at all if we didn't have a community to play with and to talk about this stuff with. Most of the stuff that we talk about here has kind of been filtered through the community. We've kind of been talking it out through the past 2 weeks with the people that we play with and just chat with. The experiences that we have in game with the people that are part of this community, that all makes it onto the show. So it's by far the best thing that anybody can do is just come be a part of the Goons and play ESO with us.
Yep.
So scrollingpodcast@gmail.com to get that invite. Shout out to the chat. I think it was just GrizzlyCon and FK tonight. Thanks for being here, guys. Good to see you. Shout out to Maddie Quinn, Uncle Sam, Ironworks, King Nar, KDMS, FK, probably some other people that I'm leaving out. We've all just been playing a lot, especially that Premade squad. Really been ripping it up. It's been super duper fun. Shout out to the Elder Goons, the OGs, the guys that have been around, the guys and girls that have been around since the very beginning. Thank you all so much for just sticking around so long, man. It's been awesome. Been an awesome ride. And shout out to our Stoons Boon recipients, our Patreon supporters: Pork Buddy, Toadster, Gummy Bear, Grizzly Khan, Thomas, Taggart, Mother of Dragons, Sudica, Jim, Maxwell, Derpin Stuff, Dudagon, Brewerman, Brock, Redhead Monster, Chumpy, John E. Danger, and Odin.
Quick edit to shout out FK. He signed up for the Patreon as we were making this recording. So thank you very much, FK. We'll add you to the list in the future.
Thank you all so very, very much. We appreciate it. GrizzlyCon says, I joined the one in game.
Two
I joined in
technically.
one game. What? Joined what?
He's saying he joined in some games, I think.
Oh no, Grizzly, you're right. You're right. Shout out to GrizzlyCon for squatting up in BGs as well. Right. Okay. Yeah, he wants all the shit. He's not good.
Shout out Grizzly Con, gosh dang it.
He's like,
He needs that shout
I am owed 2 shout outs. Thank you very much.
Shout out for each game.
All right, there's your 2 shout outs, Grizzly. Gosh.
Very nice.
All right, I think that's the end of the podcast. Anything else, maybe?
I think that's it. Excited for this expansion. It's going to be fun. Excited this coming
Me
Monday.
too. We're going to have lots of stuff to talk about on the next one. So we will see you then. Okay, I guess we'll end it right there. That was a weird one, but